what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Week 7 is upon us. Thursday night is going to be popping. We're going into a big, strong week across the NFL. We only have 2 teams on the bye, and we're going to go over all 32 teams, how they did in week 6, who they're playing in week 7, ranking them 1 through 32. Before I do, if you are new to the channel, football is kind of new, starting to pick up on this channel, usually focused mostly on baseball, but football is starting to get quite a bit of a community in its own. Join the community, subscribe to the channel. There is giveaways on this channel, and the next one is at 1,500 subs, so you must be a sub to do it, so make sure you are doing that. Otherwise, guys, we're just going to jump right into it. I want to go through these games. It's been a busy week, so I'm just going to start flying. And number 32, finding their way back home, we have the Carolina Panthers, who are now 1-5 on the season, giving up over 30 points pretty much every single game. I'm pretty sure it's every single game. Just gave up 38 to Atlanta, losing in their division. And for the most part, they are quite far behind in terms of every other team in their division. The rest of the other teams seem like they might be fighting for playoff spots, with one exception possibly being the Saints. But Carolina, after a little bit of hype when Dalton came in, and it's starting to be the same old story. And honestly, the defense side of the ball is the biggest shocker to me. They are going to go on the road now to play that high-flying Washington team, so expect them to fall to even lower. Next up, we have the New England Patriots, and even though they lost, I did move them up one spot because on the one side of it, they do seem to have one little bit advantage, in my opinion, over Carolina. Maybe this new quarterback, Mayo, is going to have something to say, bring this team out of the gutter. They lose 41-21. Houston really demolished them overall. Didn't really expect that to be any other way. But we finally saw some offense of the Patriots, which we haven't seen all season. So there is something to hang their hat on. They are traveling to London now. They do get a chance to play against a struggling Jaguars team, which both teams are 1-5. So maybe an equal matchup. It'll be nice to see how the new quarterback and the new system and all that starts to play for New England. It's going to be, I guess it's a primetime game, even though it's 6:30 in the morning here on the West Coast, but that'll be fun to watch. Number 30, Cleveland Browns. So I think for the most part, every team in this bottom row lost, and even going on to the next row. So a lot of losing records, and Cleveland is no exception. They lose 20-16 to the Philadelphia Eagles. Guess there was a time that they somewhat made a game of it, but just felt like they never really got anything going. And I think the boos and the calls for Watson to be yanked out of this team are starting to be very, very loud, and rightfully so. The team just has not performed. They are going to be going and hosting Cincinnati. A chance for this could potentially be the biggest game of their year, because we don't really think that Cleveland's going to make the playoffs based on what we've seen, based on the rest of the division, how that's been going. But they also have a chance here to make a big statement and really eliminate, in my opinion, Cincinnati's chances of making the playoffs. So for the Cleveland Brown fans, this is going to be a highlight game for them. They trade Amari Cooper over to the Bills too. That's a big story. So it's almost like they're throwing in the towel. Are they going to try to find a way to get rid of this Watson deal contract with all the controversy going on? I think that's going to be the big story for Cleveland going on the rest of the season. Number 29, not a lot to say about the Dolphins. They had a bye this past week. They're looking to try to get a little bit healthier. They're still not going to have Tua back just quite yet, and they're going to be on the road, I believe, to go to Indianapolis, which is a team normally you would think they'd be a favorite, but right now they're a dog. Rightfully so. They just have not been good whatsoever so far this season. Without Tua, it's just not been the same old team. Although we can't really say Tua would have made much of a difference because we only saw him for a game and a half. So until they start to show otherwise, this team is going to be a bottom row. And right now, fighting with the Patriots for possibly worst in the division. They barely squeak out that win. They are 2-3, somehow still in this division fight. If they can hang on with a big win in Indy, they're going to be right there in it somehow. Number 28, arguably for some people would have them even lower. It's just not been a good season. The highlight, of course, coming early when they did beat Baltimore, but they pretty much got destroyed in their home barn against the Pittsburgh Steelers this past weekend. 32-13, not a whole lot of offense going in. If you watch that game, even though I kind of emphasized their home barn, it was mostly terrible towels being flung around there, right? It was definitely a home game for Steelers. Steelers fans tend to travel well. I'm starting to wonder, like, playing for Las Vegas, are these home games really going to be much advantage? It kind of feels like a rough situation to be playing in front of the fans. It's not like the Golden Knights where the fans definitely show up for the home team. Seems to be a different kind of story in the NFL. And is it playing an impact on what this team's capable of? I'm starting to think that it might. Las Vegas goes on to play the Rams on the road. Could be a good matchup there. Rams still recovering from injuries, so that one will match up pretty well coming this week. Number 27. Just an ugly week for them. They get absolutely spanked by the Bears, and they did get out to a 3-0 lead in London, and then they pretty much fell off the tracks there. 35-16 does become the final score. It never really was close ever since the first couple quarters, and Jacksonville is they really dug themselves a hole. They're in an interesting situation. They have a back-to-back London game now. They're playing the Patriots. They have to win, but like, this team has just been wheels coming off, and I can't really put my finger on completely what's been wrong. The defense isn't really holding much of its own, but at the same time, Trevor Lawrence, has he really peaked, and are we going to start to see maybe it's time for Jacksonville to look at a potential different quarterback? So it's something Jacksonville Jaguars, after the past couple of years, been in the conversation to be this division titan, pun kind of intended, but Jacksonville just not sorting it out. Number 26, the team in that division I was making that pun about, I do have the Tennessee Titans. They don't move any spots. We've only seen them pick up one W on the season, and that was against a struggling Skylar Thompson and the Miami Dolphins. Tennessee falls short in their division by a field goal, 20-17. Again, Tennessee, for the most part, has played every single game super tough. They shouldn't have lost the first two games, really. They threw one away against the Bears early on in that week one, and I think it was New England, whoever was week two. I can't recall off the top of my head, but either way, we could see a 3-win team here, and they're at least playing super competitive. Is Will Levis the answer for the quarterback? Probably not. We're going to start to see some of these teams. There's a couple quarterbacks that it's maybe time to start taking a different approach, and we've seen how some rookies this year have really become a little bit stellar. So our team's going to start to look for different hands. It's definitely going to be a little bit of a rotation going on. Number 25, coming off the bye, they're going to be playing the Raiders, and it's a situation where the Rams can pick up a big win. There's not been the exact kind of start to the season that they would have wanted. They wouldn't want to deal with injuries. No one really does. A 1-4 start. Lucky for them, the Seahawks have lost 3 in a row. The 49ers haven't had a stellar start themselves, and Cardinals, not exactly a team that's going to run away with it in this division. So at the end of the day, the Rams are in the hunt in this division. It's not out of the question. They're going to play all these division games still, and they can get the ball rolling with the Raiders. There are rumors, of course, going around with Kupp being traded, all these trades, and it's going to start to circle, and especially if they lose this week, it's going to be high and dry. Number 24, I have the New York Giants coming off a pretty disappointing loss to the Cincinnati Bengals, highlighted on a Sunday night. They were missing Neighbors, but at the same time, it's a game that really felt like they should have won. Their defense came and played very, very well and kept them in the game. It wasn't for a couple of missed field goals. This game would have at least been within 1 point by all said and done, but the Giants fall short. The offense just can't seem to get going, and it seems to be kicker problems have cost them a couple of games now this season. Reminds me of the Washington game where they didn't have the kicker, and it really hurt them in that one. New York, the expectation, I don't think, is to be really competitive for the playoffs. Mind you, if you're on the team, you are thinking that, but I think as the average fan, anyone watching the team, it seems like Washington's taking that step forward. The other two teams, the Eagles and Dallas, always were going to be in the hunt. So they're going to have a tough week. They're playing they're playing Philadelphia this week at home. So that's going to be something. Eagles seem to have their number for the last little while, but the Giants, that's division. The Eagles haven't looked great. Could be a good chance for an upset. Number 23, we have the Denver Broncos. Little bit bringing themselves back down to earth. We saw them have that great week the week before against the Raiders, and then they play again in their division against the Chargers. The Chargers kind of got out to a lead, didn't really look back. The Denver Broncos, they brought it close. It was 23-16 final. The score doesn't really tell the whole story of the game because the Chargers, for the most part, had a 2-score game the whole game. So while the Broncos brought it close, it was never really that close. And they're going to go on the road now to New Orleans on Thursday night. This is a pretty good matchup for them to rebound a young team in the Denver Broncos. I still think they are the youngest team in the NFL on average. They're going to be having a chance against a struggling Saints team who is now missing their starting quarterback. So it's going to be a good chance for them to make a little boost and answer back for what was not the best week following a good week. Number 22, I have the Arizona Cardinals. Falling a few spots. I think the reality is starting to set in that the depth in Arizona just isn't quite there yet. Marvin Harrison Jr. left the game with injury situation going on. I don't remember if he came back or not, or what his status is. If you hit any point in this video and you know, drop it in the comments below. Love to keep the conversation going. But the Cardinals, just kind of status quo, 34-13 against the Packers. Just not really a close game. Packers kind of had their way with them, and that seems to be what's going on with the Cardinals. Even though we saw the upset against San Francisco a couple of weeks ago, it's not going to be something we're going to see very often. The Cardinals have had a pretty tough schedule out of the gate. Their record isn't atrocious, and they're going to have a chance here Monday Night Football playing the LA Chargers. So it's going to be a pretty fair matchup, I think, based on how both teams have looked so far, power rankings-wise. They're a little bit spread out, with the Chargers being a little bit ahead. Number 21. Joe Flacco, who seems to be the answer for any team that wants to play him when their quarterback goes down. Indy squeaks at that win we talked about against Tennessee already. They're going to have a chance now against Miami, who is going to not be at their fullest. So this is a chance for Indy to build up some wins along the way here, going into possibly another chance to fight for that last wild card spot. That's kind of where I see them, but I want to see them build. Without Jonathan Taylor, and a tight game against the Titans. For the most part, they've played a lot of tight games. They just can't seem to stay healthy enough to get their whole squad together. I would love to see what Indy's capable of if they can just get a little bit of consistency going. Number 20, shooting up the board, and after being a staple in the bottom row last year, they're now 4-2 on the season. That game in London, we might look back at it as the Caleb Williams coming out party. He really put on quite an offensive showing, and kind of demonstrated why he was such a touted pick going into it. They're coming now. They're going to have a week off and a chance to really watch the rest of the NFC North play some tough games and beat up. And then they're going to have to show themselves as competitive in this division. They're going to have their games against Minnesota. They're going to have their games against the Lions and against the Packers. And those are going to be the ones that are going to really impact whether this team is able to get themselves into the playoff conversation, because we know the other three teams are very well in that conversation. Don't know if it has room for all four, but right now, Chicago's making that name for themselves. Number 19. I think without Derek Carr, you could make the argument that they're even lower on this board. Rattler is going to be starting this week. Taysom Hill also very doubtful with his rib injury. So it's going to be a short week for them playing on Thursday here against a tough, young Denver hungry team. Realistically, we could see the Saints fall down if Denver picks up a big win here, which I would not put it outside of the realm of possibility. The Saints, they were in such a barn burner battle against the Buccaneers. 51-27 ended up being the final. I think before we're like halfway through the second quarter, and it was already 50 points on the boards with the teams combined. Saints now fall to Atlanta. They fell to the Buccaneers, which really is going to hurt their shot at the division. I think they fell to 2-4 even. It's not been a great start after such an offensive explosion. Those first two games, the Saints have really fallen down the board. Number 18. They're in the news today because Davante Adams has rejoined his brothers, Aaron Rodgers and Lazard, from the Green Bay Packer days onto the New York Jets. New York Jets fell 3 points short of the Buffalo Bills on the Monday night. It was a great game to watch, very close, and really didn't hold too much of that against them. The Jets performed as a team that I think is capable of starting to bring it together, and now when they bring Adams and Rodgers connection in, I think it's only going to help them even more. Jets are going to go on the road now to play Pittsburgh, which is going to be a really, really good game. In the Sunday night game, this is very possible to be potential playoff for implications. Both these teams are going to be borderline, if not wild card teams, and probably going to be a big impact. We're going to, I think, see Russell Wilson play in that game, so that's going to be exciting. The Jets losing to the Bills now are a couple games back, which really makes it tougher for them to make up the ground in the division. Number 17, I think it might be the highest 2-4 team we've ever seen on this board, and it's no slight to the Bengals. They always seem to find a way to have an atrocious start to the season and somehow get in the mix. It was a different kind of game for them because their defense has been the story as being the downside, but it was almost like they were the reason they got in this game with that short win over the Giants on that Sunday nighter. They're going to be going on the road to play Cleveland. I kind of talked about it when I talked about Cleveland. This is a very important game for the season for the Bengals. If they lose this one, it's going to be back down to the drawing board because they're going to start falling a little too far behind the rest of the pack. Going to 2-5 just won't be good enough. Number 16. Got the LA Chargers. They just continue to kind of surprise me and pick up massive wins. They're not putting up crazy numbers, 23-16. The offense hasn't been like lights out, but at the same time, the defense has not been giving up a lot of points as well. And it's enough to put them in games and win games. And Herbert hasn't been 100% since probably week 1, right? So the Chargers have been maintaining this pace, which is good. And to me, they're going under the radar a little bit on a lot of teams. We could see them start to shoot up this board if they start to put together a couple of wins. They're going to go against Arizona on the double header, both games Monday nighter this week, and that's a big chance for them to really pick up some ground in this what's going to be a crazy AFC. So I think some chance here for the Chargers to make up some ground and get into the top 3 rows on this board. Number 15, after losing 3 in a row, and I think they were as high as 5th on this board. I think the reality is that Geno Smith is kind of who we kind of expected him to be, given a couple of picks against San Fran. They're just not a team that is probably longevity being able to compete with San Fran. Going on the road again, they're going to play a top 5 team here, the Atlanta Falcons, a team that has shown offensively that they have the firepower. I don't know if Seattle's going to be able to compete with this one, but it's going to be a fun one. That's an exciting battle of the birds that we're going to be looking forward to. Seattle, I think, a little bit more down to reality. Number 14. It feels kind of ugly. I think this is the exact same spot that they were in last week, but they got absolutely blown out this week, embarrassed on Jerry Jones' 80th or 82nd birthday, 47-9 against the Detroit Lions. The thing is, I couldn't really, even though they got destroyed, the Lions are just so high on this board, and we have a lot of hype behind the Lions that I wasn't going to hold it too much against them, as bad as that game really was. I had to think back, Steelers game. Again, if you really think about the Steelers game, it was bad too. You can make some arguments, but I think below here, every team has had potential struggles. The one team that I could argue, I think, that might want to swap them is possibly the Chargers. But Dallas still very much in the hunt. We're going to have to find some regroup. This is their week. This is their bye week. They have to kind of sort out what's going on with this team, because if they keep playing the way we've seen the past couple of weeks, we're going to see them in the bottom 2 rows. Forget about falling 1 row. We're going to see them in the bottom 2 rows, because this is a pace. This is a division that we're starting to see the tide shift a bit with Washington coming up. Number 13. Just talked about them. They did play Dallas the week before. They did lose to Dallas the week before. They could have won that game. So I think at this point, match them up again. Steelers just, I think with Russell Wilson coming, it's a whole different game when you bring in another quarterback. The Steelers just look better this past week. Something they seem to build on compared to Dallas, just looking ugly. 32-13 over the Raiders. They're going to have a massive game against the Jets. I do think they have the edge on the Jets, but that's going to be a fun game. Like, that might potentially be my game of the week. Number 12. These guys seem to be holding on to this spot by the skin of their teeth. They just aren't doing anything that really makes you say, wow, the Eagles are really flying away with it. But at the same time, they're not doing anything that makes you think they're throwing their season away. So they pick up a big win. It's against the Cleveland Browns, a team that's struggling, but they pick up the wins, and they're picking up the wins that matter. They're not exactly putting offense together. We saw the first game back with A.J. Brown, which he did have an impact in that game, and the defense seems to be holding the other teams at bay. So that being said, they're playing on the road against the Giants. They have to win this division game because this division is just so tight. Maybe not the Giants, but I think skill-wise, these teams all match up very well together, so you got to pick up the wins in your division. Number 11, speaking of that same division, we have the Washington Commanders coming off a loss to the Baltimore Ravens. never really had it. The Ravens kind of got the offense going. They're running the ball, killing the clock, and kind of never let Washington stick around close enough. The game ended up being a 7-point game, but you never really thought Washington was threatening for the W in that game. 30-23 was the final score. At the same time, I'm more excited to see how Washington's been playing good, but when we start to see them against top 5 teams, teams that have solid defense, teams that can also score themselves, not necessarily is going to be a team that matches up very well. But at the same time, I do have them the highest in their own division, so they are on playoff bound, and we're only going to see him get better as he gets more and more experience with this Washington Commanders team. So I'm excited for that team, number 10. I think I moved them up. I must have moved them up a couple of spots, right? It feels like I might have them too low, but now I'm looking at it, maybe not. 51 points they threw up against their own division rival, New Orleans Saints. So the Buccaneers have been a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde team, but offensively they've definitely been there more times than not. Coming up next, they are playing Monday Night Football against Baltimore. So that's probably going to be, of the 2 games on Monday night, that's going to be the one most people are going to be tuning into. We're going to see how Baker plays against another playoff team. Tampa Bay, they're right there in the playoff hunt. You would expect them at this point. They're going to make the playoffs. They're playing like it. They have the team to do it. But now it's time to Baker, the rest of them. Let's get you. Are you a top 5 team? You got to start winning against these top 5 other teams. Right now, we haven't seen it. Number 9. San Francisco 49ers picking up a big win and kind of cementing, all right, it hasn't been the perfect season for them so far. They've had a couple of crazy losses along the way, but they found their way Thursday night against Seattle, and that's something to build on. Now they're going to be hosting a Super Bowl rematch against the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that's coming off a bye. It's not really setting up to be such a great one for them. They're kind of dealing with their own issues still. So I'm not going to read too much into it if they somehow lose it, but at the same time, I'm not discounting them. They're a top 9 team according to me, and that's a team who we've had at number 1 constantly, right? But someone's going to dethrone them eventually. Number 8. These Bills, I like what they did. They bounced back after a loss to Houston the week before. It's tight. It was ugly. It was a grind of a game. They beat the Jets, and it was a solid win at that. They are now going to go on and host the Titans, a team that in the past has given them some tough matchups, and they seem to be matching up most years. But the Bills are going to be able to build off that, and I think bringing in Amari Cooper is going to be a big deal for this offense. So we might see them start to climb the board. Number 7. Green Bay Packers, 34-13. We're finally seeing Jordan Love kind of settle in after that little bit of a rough start with the injuries coming back in with a lot of interceptions being thrown off. Big, solid win for the Packers, one to be excited about. They are going to match up next against number 6, the Houston Texans. And part of why I do the power rankings, because sometimes these guys land beside each other, like in this instance, gives me an opportunity to be like, show you. I'm kind of leaning Houston in this matchup, but they're very close. It's going to be possibly the game of the week on its own. We have a few games of the week, honestly. But Texans themselves, just a solid win against the Patriots. Not much to talk about there. It's time to move on, play some of these tough matchups. Number 5. Atlanta just kind of par for the course. They had a solid win, put up 38 points against Carolina. Not much else to talk about on that. They're going to play Seattle. I want to see them maintain the solid wins, continue to have Kirk Cousins make progress with this offense and put up the kind of numbers. And I think they will be able to do that. Seattle is a team who usually has a massive home field advantage. And for Atlanta to be at home in this one, it's going to be important. Number 4, coming off a bye. If you're new to this power rankings, not often do I drop teams on the power rankings on a bye. But I think based on what we've seen from some of the other teams this week, it kind of had to be done. Minnesota 5-0 start. Got to be super excited about that. But there are maybe some issues. The last game against the Jets wasn't exactly perfect. While the other teams ahead of them that moved up have lost, they just have shown some pretty amazing stats for them. They're going to be playing Detroit at home. So that's going to be a big, big game. And it's going to be potentially why I moved these around as well. Number 3, have the Baltimore Ravens. They've just been super solid. I think they're setting massive records when it comes to running. Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson as a whole have just been amazing together. The Monday Night Football at Tampa Bay, setting up for another amazing matchup of offense. We're going to see a lot of offense in that game. We'll see again if Baltimore's defense can continue to shine the way it has. Number 2, I did have to move them up because that game, that drubbing of Dallas, in my opinion, just demonstrated to me I think they are better than the Vikings. I expect them to beat the Vikings this week. So if that's the case, I kind of have to put them at number 2, and that what resulted in the Vikings falling. At the same time, I just think Baltimore, if they played the Vikings, has that same kind of edge. So Detroit, not much to say. This, I guess, the big story: Adrian Hutchinson going down, broken leg, surgery. He's going to be out for, I think, the season. I didn't actually see how long that takes to repair. I assume based on that. So that's really going to hurt. But at the end of the day, the Lions have same guys. They have massive upside. They're gonna feel that. They're definitely gonna feel that injury. But yeah, number 1, the bye week, all the same. Super Bowl champs, haven't lost yet. Got to keep them up there because really, they haven't lost, and they're Super Bowl champs. How can I say they're not number 1 in that case? They beat number 3. They've beaten other teams. Number 5, so got to be number 1, right? They're playing number 9 this week. Same kind of story. It's going to be fun to watch. Rematch of the Super Bowl. But guys, there you have it. 1 through 32. Lots going on. Lots going into week 7. Let me know what you guys think. What would you change? Where am I completely out to lunch? Etc., etc. And we will see you for that next video.